Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, E-commerce Excellence, Mastering Integration and Optimization with Shopify, BigCommerce, and Acumatica, presented by Justin Sanchez. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar, and we'll answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. We're also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were unable to attend today. And finally, we'd appreciate your participation in our closing polls and survey. With that said, we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us. SWK is here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing your tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So we've got Justin here today, who is an expert, so do not hesitate to ask any questions you have. And as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media. So check us out and give us a follow on LinkedIn, Twitter/X, Facebook, or check out our YouTube, where we'll post our recorded webinars and other useful how-to content. So that's enough for me. I'm going to hand it over to Justin for the main event.
Hey, thanks, Courtney. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great day so far. I'm going to exit presentation mode here and we'll get started. I've already got my local instance loaded here. Give me 1 second to make sure that I'm presenting well. Awesome, great. Okay, so one of the first things that I like to go over when we're viewing the connector within the system, and my objective of today is really to show you a little bit about the native connectors, both being used for Shopify and for BigCommerce. And so today we'll take a look at some of the settings that are kind of most important, and one of the things that when focusing on an implementation, things to consider, right? So I work with a lot of different clients, and so some of the areas that we come across often or we talk about are the different type of entities that can be synced between the two platforms, how often these records get synced back and forth, and of course, those things come up often. And so really the objective today is to kind of go through those things and show a little bit about the system. Okay. Well, and a little bit about myself. Just I'm one of the consulting team leads here at SWK, and I work on implementations. And so happy to be with you this morning. Okay, so let's focus. So one of the first things you'll notice is when your license gets registered or updated for the connector, the native connector within Acumatica, this new module is going to show up, and it's just called Commerce, right? And there's a couple key places here in Commerce. There's this configuration area and this processes. We'll actually be using this processes area pretty extensively today because I don't have my real-time syncs on for everything within the system. And so we'll be doing preparing and processing so that we can get some sales orders through, and I can show you what that looks like. Let's first start with our Shopify store. So I'm going to click here. And I've already got a Shopify store configured in here. And it was simply done by just adding a store front. And you'll notice that I'm going to click through on the storefront here. And so one of the first things you'll notice in the tab here that we have are the connection settings. This is pretty straightforward stuff. This is information that's supplied from the Shopify storefront. So you'll log into Shopify, we'll ask for your API credentials and the information needed to begin the connection between both ends of the software. And then in here, you'll notice the next tab is the entity settings. We'll spend a little bit of time here because I want to explain what the entities are, how they sync, and really the direction of the syncs I think is pretty important as well. And then we'll go through what makes the differences between Shopify, and then you'll be able to see the differences in BigCommerce as well. And one of the things you can do is once you have the credentials logged in here, we do a test connection, and then the system will test and it'll come back and give us this message, the operation is complete. And that's how we know that we've established the connection between Acumatica and Shopify. Okay, so the entity settings here, it's really important to know. So the way that Acumatica connects to Shopify and the way it syncs information is it breaks out or pieces this information between the systems into these separate entities. And the entities are really just records, right? So you've got your customer, company, customer locations, stock items, non-stock templates, and so on and so forth, right? And so all of these are different entities within the system, and they're configured differently as well. So in order for me to make a sales order entity active, I first need to configure the rest of the native connector here in order for me to establish the connection between the two systems, right? And the other thing to keep in mind is the sync direction. So the sync direction determines whether or not records can be imported, exported, or whether they're bidirectional. So we do have some entities within the system that are bidirectional, one of those being your customer entity. And so if I double click on this area here, you'll notice that the customer record is bidirectional, which means that I can create records within Acumatica and publish those customer records to Shopify. Likewise, I can create customer records in Shopify, and those will publish to Acumatica. Now, the native function set is to do imports, which means that the Shopify customers are specific to whoever's been sourced through the website, meaning you won't see any Acumatica-based customers within the website. Instead, it'll just contain customers that entered through the website, and then those records will sync back into the system. And so importing is the natural function of the connector, but you are able to go in and change the sync direction. Okay. The next area here is the primary system. Simply put, this just lets us know what is the system of record for the customer entity that's syncing in. And so in here, for the connector purposes, any records that sync in from Shopify, the system of record for that customer record or profile would be the external system, meaning Shopify would own the customer record, right? And so this just gives you an idea of what the primary system is, the ERP being Acumatica and the external system being the website, right? Or Shopify in this case. The real-time import and exports, these are near real time. I shouldn't say that these are exactly as within milliseconds. It just depends on the frequency of data being passed through the systems. So if you've got a lot of sales orders, and what I would consider a lot of sales orders would be anything that maybe exceeds I'd say maybe 150 sales orders a day would probably be a lot of sales orders, right? Or many sales orders. And in that instance, when you're syncing a lot of those sales orders throughout the day, this is several that could be syncing. Something like that might be where you might see records not syncing, within seconds, but maybe minutes of each other, right? And so it's important to understand that the real-time import and exports, these are near real time. They aren't, it is not as quick as you do something in one side of the system and it quickly processes in the other. In some cases it can, but in most cases it's usually a few minutes between the two systems. And the identification here is whether or not these are supported. And so you'll notice that the customer entity is not supported. And so you'll say, well, why is that? Why can I not sync in a customer entity in real time, right? And that's because the customer entity is not a standalone record entity. In fact, it actually relies on a sales order entity. And so it will follow whatever the import status of the sales order is, because a customer entity is designed to come in on, attached to a sales order. And so it does require, collaboration between these two entities in order for a customer entity to sync within the system. Okay. And so once we've configured these parts of the system, or once you've understood these entity parts of the system, it's also important to understand that within these areas here, there are different mapping. It's one of the great things that Acumatica and Shopify have really worked hard on. This can be done within BigCommerce as well. And what the area I'm going to show you right now has more to do with what we call the entity mapping. And so in order to see that, I'm going to click here on a sales order. Open up this new tab here, and this will show us the entity and allow us to start or stop the real-time sync, but it's also going to give us the import mapping and the filtering that can be done. And so let's say, for instance, that we've got a sales order that we want to be filtered out until we've addressed it, or maybe we're doing some sort of um, verification of payment on the front end. Perhaps we're using Shopify POS, and because we're using Shopify POS, there may be some other steps involved on the front end. And so it could be that you're wanting to have records be held, and you want to filter those out if the records are in a certain status. If you go to import filtering, you're actually able to add these filters within the system, and you're able to go in here and you could say, well, for instance, if the status of the order, and you're able to modify this to say, well, I can have it where if the order total equals a certain amount, if the order status URL is equal to, and so in here you're able to filter out records that are making their way into the system. So there's a real big benefit here, and we've seen a lot of customers use this in a way that allows for them to determine or modify the connector outside of what you see through the native functions, right? So this adds a bit more customizing to the system, or being able to customize the what records are able to sync within the system. So again, this is a great feature here, and we've seen a lot of customers. There's a lot of different use cases. I've worked on one recently that had to do with payments and being able to um, um, filter out payments and wait for the status of a payment. So wanted to show that so that you understand that it's not just creating and maintaining the entities within here, but there is another layer within the entities, and that comes to the import and export filtering, okay, and the mapping that can be done as well. And the mapping really focuses on meta fields. For those who are familiar with Shopify meta fields, if you have a meta field that exists within Shopify and you want that meta field to be synced within the system, you're able to focus on, like, let's say the customer entity, and you've got a meta field on the customer entity. You can have that be mapped to an attribute within Acumatica, and that can be done natively within the system. So it doesn't require customization. And so I think that's the key point that I want to make here, is that, you know, 3-4 years ago, this would require some sort of customization to the connector to be able to sync data like that between the two platforms. And by now having this mapping that happens within the connector natively, you're able to now avoid doing heavy customizations. You're able to avoid having to have sync issues. And so this is a great area to focus on. Okay. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the settings within these different areas here. We won't take a ton of time, but I do want for everybody to just understand what these different settings are. And so you do have your customer class functions that still are important to get in place. You do have your inventory settings. This is one of my favorite places within the system, especially within Shopify here, is that you're able to map your warehouse to your Shopify location. And so one of the great things here is that if I have inventory in separate locations, so this can be that, let's say I multi-warehouse, or I've got a 3PL that I'm using, I'm able to come in here and list all of my warehouses that are available within the system here. And I can select my different warehouses, and then I can actually tie that to a Shopify location that's being pulled in through the API connection. And so what's great about that is when you get to the front end of Shopify here and you go to your products, and let's pull up one of the products that I've been using recently. It's just this Acer laptop here. And if you scroll down here, it breaks out the availability based on the location. And so you create the locations within Shopify, and then you do the mapping within the connector here, and you're able to say, well, this warehouse represents this inventory, and publish it to this Shopify location. And so that's a really neat feature within the system. And then likewise, when orders are syncing back in, you can say, well, this order took place at this retail location and should be synced to this retail warehouse. And so you're able to see that within the sales order as well. Another cool feature that I really like is the fact that you can tag your external orders with the ERP order number. And all that means is that when an order gets placed within the system, one of the ways to know, we have a lot of folks often say, well, how do I know that my order reached Acumatica? And the way to know that is that it automatically tags your sales order in Shopify with the ERP order number that got synced over into Acumatica. So it's really neat to be able to see that. Okay, so now that we kind of gone through a little bit about the the connections within the system and the different basic settings that you see here and the configurations that can happen within the entity settings. I do want to focus on one other area before we move into a bit of a demo here. I want to show a couple sales orders that we'll publish into the system, and then I'll show a bit of the BigCommerce side, and then we can get into some Q&A. So over here for the payment settings, this is a new feature that was recently added that I really like, and that's that so you used to have the store payment method. So in this case, I'm using Shopify payments, and that's attached to an ERP payment method. And all this means is that this is the store payment method that was used on the front end. So my Shopify test tenant right now, or test site, is set up to use Shopify payments. So this is a field that's being published in from Shopify. And what I did was I created an ERP payment method called Shopify, and then I created a cash account that's essentially a clearing account for those who are financial who are on the call. So we've got a clearing account that is attached, what represents this cash account here, and it's just I added a GL account to the chart of accounts, and then I made this a clearing account. Okay, and this is all something that's been in the connector for quite a while. One of the new things that got added in 24R1 is, 23R2, was the fact that now you have this these Shopify fees that get listed below here. And what's great about this is now you have these processing fees that come in. And so when you're doing your bank deposits, before you'd have to create an entry type, and then you'd have to list out the fees separate from your bank deposits. And what's nice about this is that it identifies that there's going to be a processing fee. So the fees on the Shopify order through the connector are now identified. And what you do is you put your entry type within this section of the connector here. And what it does is it uses this entry type in the GL account for a disbursement of Shopify fees. So when you go to do your bank deposit, your clerks and your accounting team is not having to put in those fees separately, but now it makes your reconciliation between the two systems a lot easier. So this is a new feature that was recently added. I think it's pretty neat, and something that we've been configuring a lot with folks who are upgrading. So a great feature there. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get into some of the testing. I'm sure that's what you want to see. So we'll go into an order here. I did test a couple things, and I want to show. So we do have some B2B entities in here. B2B has been a huge focus for Acumatica when it comes to the e-com space, and so I hope to show that to you today. And so over here in customers, if you have the B2B enabled within your Shopify settings there, you'll see this companies area here. And so I created this company yesterday. This is just a standard, company here, and then it has its own approval process, and I was able to extend them terms. And so I'll show you kind of what that looks like. So let's do a company today, and we'll just call the company. Come up with a couple things on the fly here. Flash Incorporated, and we'll call it Flash. And main contact, we'll add a new contact. We'll call this that. And we'll do something like this. We'll put in the main contact's name there. We're not going to put any marketing emails to that person. And what we'll also do is, give me a second, I've got a couple of addresses here that I'll use. And then we'll also say that the location, the shipping address is the same, Matt Williams. And for the address here, we'll just use something like this. Perfect. That's fine there. And terms, we're going to give them a 30-day terms there. And this should be fine here. So we'll save this company record. Oh, let's see here. Oh, I forgot to put in the mistake there. And this is in California. Great. There we go. So now we've created this company now, and it's just Flash Incorporated. You'll see that they're approved, and you might have a different approval process for creating a company within Shopify. That's fine. You can see we've got a main contact. We just called this person Matt Williams, and now we're going to start with an order here. So I'm going to create an order, and we'll use that same Acer laptop that I've been using. Add that there. And we've got our payment terms. So we've got a payment due later, and it says payment terms within 30 days. So we don't anticipate to take payment today, right? Um, if we had taxes in here, they would be calculating. I don't have any taxes currently registered, but if you use something like an Avalara for taxes, or you only ship within your state, or you're running like a Shopify POS, you're able to set up taxes natively within Shopify, and then those taxes can then be synced over into Acumatica. And whether or not you're using something like an Avalara or something or using the native tax tables within Shopify, the taxes are able to carry over. I do want to show that really briefly here in the order settings here. So we are able to do tax synchronization, which allows the synchronization between the two platforms. And so making sure that the taxes charged on the front end match the taxes on the back end. And there's a little bit of nuance in there. And so it can be that you are using Shopify to check the tax rate, and then when you go to ship it, you actually want it to write the liability once the sales order ships out of Acumatica, or you want it to check the rate on Shopify as well as write the liability to your account at the time that the taxes are taken in Shopify. So there's a little bit of configuration that happens sometimes. So clients often ask, what are the differences and what are the benefits of doing either or? It's really up to the business, right? But there are some options with how you can do the taxes. So I wanted to make that point since you don't see any taxes here. It's only because I don't have it configured. Okay, let's create this order. Excellent. So now we've got an order that's created. This is order 1054 within Shopify. I'm going to go back to my connector here, and we don't have real-time syncs running right now. So in the system, the way to get a sales order or record to sync within the system, we'll go here to Commerce and we'll go to these under the processes here. You've got two steps to get information or records into the system, data into the system. And one is to first prepare the records and then process the records. So we'll click on the prepare. You're going to see that it's going to open up a list of the entities here. We'll make sure that we've got our Shopify store connected here, selected here. And what we'll do is we'll select this sales order entity here. This is not something that you'll be expected to know, right? The real-time syncs will be handling this, but it is important to know how the system gets information from the front end into the back end. It's really valuable to know that because this is where you'll be able to troubleshoot and determine whether or not records are syncing as expected or not, right? And so this is a way to manually sync records if you're having issues, right? So we'll prepare this record and you'll see this record count go up. So right now it's 46 records. We'll do a quick prepare. Great. And that record count went up to 48. And we'll go over here. It was 1054. So now I'm going to click on this 48 record count here. And I'm going to find that 1054, which should be right here at the end here. You're going to notice that it does not have an ERP ID, which means it's not synced within Acumatica. And now that I've prepared it, I'm going to process it. And important thing to keep in mind is I am running this on my local instance. And so when you're SaaS hosted or cloud hosted, obviously the system runs at a much higher rate. And so the system is syncs over records much quicker than this. This is just because I'm running it on my local version of Acumatica. And it's important to know that what is happening right now is the system is actually also creating the company entity as well as the sales order and bringing in the payment as well. So there's a lot of things happening within the system right now. Let's give it another minute here. Make sure that we're able to see it sync over. Let me close a couple of these other windows just to make sure that we have some bandwidth there. Perfect. And again, important to know that the system runs much quicker when it's cloud hosted. Okay, so I don't want you to think that is typical of standard time, right? It's just because I have a local version of the system. I'm going to go to sales orders now, and I'll go in here and we'll view that sales order that's synced over. And so here we've got 1054. The sales order's in and it's open. I'm going to click in here. And you'll notice that the customer name is Flash. So that's the company that was created. And not only did it create the company of the Flash that we created on the front end, but also the contact is Matt Williams, the person who we created on the front end as well. So this really supports that B2B um, um, connectivity between the two systems, something that's pretty important for folks who are running or selling wholesale to distributors, right? So um, um, let's also look at the financial piece, which is important as well. You'll see that terms also synced over. So we've got 30-day terms within the system. And so now we're able to process this. And for those who are on the call who are either with Acumatica or looking at Acumatica as a solution, not just the connector, but Acumatica itself, I'm going to do what's known in the system as a quick process. And this is just the ability to create the shipment and do that very quickly in the system. So I'm going to quick process. And this allows for me to confirm the shipment and prepare the invoice. And this way it does it all in one fell swoop, and I don't have to worry about it. Before I do that, actually, let me show as well. And so the payment, you'll notice that the payment record did not sync over here. Okay, the payment did not sync, and that's because it is a separate entity. Let's see if we can sync that. Oh, excuse me. That's because we didn't take a payment. I'm sorry. That's because we extended terms to the client. I'm so sorry. So we did not. So that's why you don't see the payment. So when the invoice gets generated here, what will happen is it will show up on the OpenAR for the accounting so that you can begin sending statements out to your customer. Um, and so we'll do prepare invoice and we'll release that invoice. So we'll do that now and we'll click OK. And what's going to happen now is the system is going to process this in what we call a quick process. And so typically what would happen is you might generate a shipment. That shipment would generate a pick list. The pick list would go out to the warehouse would then use that pick list to go out and begin picking the order, packing it, and then shipping it, depending on the shipping software that you're using within Acumatica. If you're using the native pick, pack, and ship function, or whether you're using um, like a shipping software, which the system supports as well. There's multiple different ship softwares that I've worked with, so lots of different options there. So you notice that the shipment is created. It's important to know in Acumatica, the shipment's considered a separate form. So the way I like to explain shipments to sales orders is the sales order is the obviously where the payment lives, and it's what identifies the line items as to what we are going to ship to the customer. But depending on how you manage your back orders and if you allow partial shipments, in your scenario, you can have a many-to-one example. So in that case, it would mean many shipments to one sales order. And that is something that the system is able to do. So in this instance, we only have one shipment to one sales order. So that's what you're seeing right now. One shipment is created for this sales order. And what we expect of this sales order, you should see the status was open, and you now notice that the status is in shipping. So while the system is processing the record here, what it's doing is it's moving it through all the stages, and I would have to do that individually. So in an effort to save time, and instead of clicking through each function, by using the quick process, it allows for us to do all of those functions, and the system will step through each of those, and I don't have to do that directly within the system. It can do it itself. So all we're waiting for is now for the invoice to get released, and it just finished. So we'll click OK, and you'll now notice that the status of the order is completed. Okay. Now what's important to notice here now is if I go back to my prepare data, and this would happen in real time. So it's important to know that this is right now is we don't have our real time sync. So I'm going to prepare the shipment. And the shipment is to export to the system to notify Shopify that this order has been fulfilled. So we want this unfulfilled status to update. And in order to show that, we're now going to prepare, and we should see a shipment record go from 0. We should see that increase, which we do. We see it now being 1 record. We're going to click on that record. And we will now process that shipment. Once this shipment gets processed, what we expect on the back end of Shopify is, or the front end it would be, is that this would now show as fulfilled, and we do see that updated to fulfilled. So now we've got a fulfilled sales order within Shopify. This was done using the B2B connectivity between the system. If I back out of 1054 here, you'll also see that we know that it's synced over to Acumatica because we also see the ERP sales order 7496. So that creates that synchronization between the two platforms for 7496. So then the question then becomes, well, what happened to that invoice? And so for those who are a bit more finance driven on the call, I'll show you what you can now do. So by now having the invoice that was generated, we'll go over to the shipment here. You now have an AR invoice, and this was released. You have your inventory decrement that was done. So when the invoice was created, the inventory, the way I have the system configured was upon the creation of the invoice, my inventory now becomes adjusted to update my real-time inventory sync. And so now making sure that when I ship something out, my inventory gets updated in real time, right? So that's what this inventory issue does. And then over here, you now see that we've got an open AR invoice, and you do see that the 30-day terms were extended to the customer based on what we assigned in Shopify. And from here, we're able to generate statements off of this invoice if we believe that it's an invoice that needs to be collective invoices. You can do multi-invoicing, so you can have, if we invoice or we provide statements with multiple invoices on them to flash, so maybe we send over the invoices once a month, that can be done as well. So you can do a collective approach in that. And so here's that representation of that. Okay, I'm going to close this here, and then I did want to show also on the shipment here, one of the questions we get asked is about tracking numbers. So I'm going to open up the shipment really quickly here and show that on the shipment, and so important to know, again, for those who are new to Acumatica, I just want to make sure I'm taking time and not moving too quickly through some of these. You've got the sales order here, and then you've got the shipment, and you'll notice that the document numbers are different, right? So the sales order is prefixed with your SO, and this is your sales order, and this is your shipment here. The shipment was generated off of the sales order, right? And it's important to know that, let's say that we had tracking information that we would have provided. And so on here, you'll see that a medium box was used. Again, we did the quick process. And so the system went through and used some of the default settings that I had in there to ship this out. But if I was doing this where I was using the pick, pack, and ship method, I would have entered in tracking information here under the tracking number. And if I would have used this feature of the system, when I would have synced the sales order back to Shopify, it would have included the tracking number. So by simply placing it into the shipment there, the native connector knows to publish the tracking number back into the system. Okay, great. Let's move on to BigCommerce. We'll move through fairly quickly, but I do want to make sure I show that side of the system, and then we'll get into some Q&A. Okay, so that should take us about another 5-10 minutes. Okay, so this is this is the BigCommerce side. Let me go back to the connector for BigCommerce. It's very similar to Shopify. There are some differences. I'm going to show what those are. So this is the BigCommerce. Again, if you didn't know the if the title was not BigCommerce, you'd probably not be able to tell the difference between Shopify and BigCommerce. Very similar type of setup here. You've got your API connection settings that you place in the system. Same thing with entities. You do have a bit more entities in here, and the reason being is that they use customer price class. They being BigCommerce uses the customer price class within the system, and it's a way to extend different um, pricing tiers to customers on the front end. Shopify does allow that as well. The way it handles it is through price lists. So it's just a different entity within the system. So BigCommerce uses customer price class. Shopify uses price list. And you can see that. In fact, I'll show that to you here so that you know that the differences are, there are differences in the system. It just depends on the way that you want to structure the data within Acumatica and publish it out to the front end of the system there. And so so Shopify here, you'll see in the entities available here that the price list is used here. And on BigCommerce, we use customer price class. Okay. You have your customer location, your customer as well. There's also in BigCommerce, there's also the price list. It also does use the price list in conjunction with the customer price class. And I'll show you what that customer price class looks like when we go to do that in BigCommerce, when we go to create a customer in BigCommerce. Okay, we've got these, so same settings here, pretty much same ability to tag the external order out into BigCommerce, so you're able to tag with the ERP order that gets generated. Same thing with inventory. I currently have warehouse mode doing all warehouses, but you could send specific warehouses out to BigCommerce. The biggest difference there is that in Shopify, you notice that on the when you go to products, and if you look at it from from the perspective of at the inventory level here, and you look here, it breaks out the different locations here. BigCommerce doesn't support that style of syncing, so you don't actually have those separate location IDs. So you'll see that the mapping is a bit different. And so in BigCommerce, it's an aggregate of your inventory that's displayed, and I'll show you what that looks like. So you're not able to do the mapping of the one-to-one and saying, oh, this is one location to this one location. But instead, BigCommerce focuses more on inventory aggregate, right? So let's say that it's less important for you to show the inventory at a specific supply chain as opposed to you just want to show your inventory as an aggregate and then you'll decide where to source it from. Then BigCommerce does that really well because then you're not focused so much on where the inventory lives. You'll do the sourcing of the sales order on the back end, whereas in Shopify's really got this like POS kind of retail store experience that they're trying to deliver to customers. And so it does that really well where you can do a one-to-one. Oh, I'm in this store and I want to ship specifically from this warehouse. Whereas in BigCommerce operates more from a perspective of we have an online presence. We use multiple warehouses. We don't really do any will call or BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store. And so because of that, BigCommerce really fits those type of clients really well. And so in this case, I've got it syncing all warehouses right now. So it shows the aggregate, the total sum of all inventory throughout the supply chain. Okay, so so we know, again, I won't go through all these different settings here. I'm just going to jump into the BigCommerce side. I'm going to close out Shopify. And on the BigCommerce side here, very similar in style as far as the customer setup. The way that the system knows that it is the system knows that you're dealing with a company is when you go to create or add a new customer to the system, you have the ability to add the information in here. So we can do something um, like this. And if we add a company name, this is the designator that this is a company, right? As opposed to in Shopify, it was you go to a specific section and you enter company, right? Whereas in BigCommerce, if you leave this field blank, then it knows it's that we're dealing with an individual or separate entity, right? We're just dealing with Mike, right? As opposed to Mike represents or is part of this other company, right? And so in this case, we might say something like, oops, let's say And this is where that customer price class comes into play here. So these are the customer groups, and these are the different customer price classes that you can sign up Mike for. So if we wanted to put him in retail, let's say he's a retail customer or he's a wholesale customer, we can designate his price class here, right? We've got a couple of other, whether he's got his exemption, we can put his tax exempt code in there if we had that. And then we can create a password for him really quick. So we've got Mike Andrews added in here. And what we can now do is, and you'll see here that this got a past order here. Mike has not ordered with us before. So we'll go back to home here and we'll go to orders. And we will add an order here. And we'll find that customer. So we'll find Mike in here. And we'll use Mike Andrews we created for the hyper incorporated there. Okay. So we'll add that address in here. So what we'll do is we'll go down here and we'll say Mike. And do billing information. So he's hyper created there. Use an address. Great. We'll add that same product that we've been dealing with. So we'll do this Acer laptop. And I do want to show you that. In fact, let's do that really quick before we move on to there so that I don't have to, actually, I'll show you after so that I don't have to pull back on that. So you'll notice a really big difference here. One of the first differences you'll notice is that I put Mike into the wholesale customer price class, and by adding Mike into the wholesale customer price class, you'll notice that 475 came up. And if you recall, on our sales orders back here, the Acer laptop is a $500 laptop, right? So already by adding Mike to that customer price class, you can see that the customer pricing that's different for the Acer laptop has already adjusted the price on the sales order because Mike is following along with that customer price class pricing that we've already established in the system, right? And so we're going to ship to this address here. We'll do a free shipping. Perfect. We'll put a payment in here. That we will email, and then we will now process the payment. So in this case, I am going to put a payment in the system. Great. So 475 has been paid on order 156. You can see that here, and the status is awaiting fulfillment, right? Let's go back over to our system over here, and we'll go to prepare and process. Remember, the prepare and process steps are fully automated real-time syncs. I just don't have them enabled in my local. There's a new setting that that the system requires that does not allow me to do that. So I have to do it this way. So we'll go prepare. So we should see this record count increase. So we'll prepare the records. Great. We saw it go to 12. Let's select those records there. Close these screens here. Excellent. So we see record 1056, 156, and that's what we see here, 156 and 156. We see that it's not yet synced over because we don't see an ERP ID. So we're now going to process that. Let's hope this takes, I think this was the step that, I think it was the quick process that took a couple of minutes. This usually goes fairly quickly here. I think I jinxed myself. And we'll wrap up with this here. I do want to publish the shipment back out to the system. That'll take a couple of other minutes, but then we will wrap up after this. I do want to show the entity here. So let's wait till this sales order gets in. Oh, while we're waiting for that to sync over, let me go into the records here and I will show you what I wanted to show you earlier, and that was that the Acer, let's find the Acer product here, and so you will see that the stock here, that shows up, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and you'll notice that in my total inventory available here, it's giving an aggregate of 305, and that is the total across my entire supply chain, right? So it does not break out the individual location specific inventory. It's just giving me an aggregate of the 305 across the different across the supply chain, right? And so that's really the one of the biggest factors of inventory differences. So I wanted to make sure that I'd shown that. Let's look at this sales order that was synced in. We've got order 156 here, and we'll go into 156. You'll see customer name is Hyper, right? That's the company name. And we'll see that the system created for Hyper Incorporated, the location is the main location, and Mike Andrews is the contact. So similar B2B outcome as Shopify, right? The biggest difference is in Shopify, you'd do that through the customers and then businesses and create the business that way. Whereas in BigCommerce, what we did was we simply included the business name, and that's how the system knew that this was a business entity and not an individual entity. One way we also know this, and the connector is really great about this, I'm going to go to the customer record, the profile here, so that you can see. And on the customer record here, you'll see that the terms get entered in as a 30-day terms, even though we accepted a payment there. And so and so this is the record that we see on the back end for the customer record. Okay. And one other area I wanted to show was that the payment also came in on this one as well. So now you can see that this is a prepayment in the amount of the 475, right? From this, we would do our quick process and then we would publish back out to the system, but I want to leave time for Q&A, so I won't show that piece. But essentially, we would do the quick process, in which case we would process this sales order and then it would publish out. And then similar to how for the Shopify side, this sales order would go from awaiting fulfillment to completed, right? And I can kick that off at the very least so you can see that it'll get done. With that being said, I will open it up for Q&A. Give me 1 second to bring up my my other sheets. Actually, before we do that, I do want to recap a little bit about what we've talked about. So give me 1 second while I do that. Perfect. So let's talk about what we're looking at here. So in Shopify here, what we've reviewed so far is we talked a little bit about the Shopify capabilities and benefits with Acumatica. We talked about the ability to sync the different entities and the mapping that you could do. We also talked about the B2B functions. We displayed what that looked like in the system. We talked a little bit about meta fields or metadata. We did not get into how that syncs over, but it's done through the mapping. And really the ability to streamline or customize your workflow, right? Similarly, for the BigCommerce side of the business, very similar. You've got your B2B and B2C customer functions within BigCommerce. We are able to also sync over categories. So as you know, for those who are looking at the differences between BigCommerce and Shopify, Shopify handles categorization done through tagging, whereas in BigCommerce does it through like the mega menu and the ability to use categories within the system. And so for BigCommerce, you are able to structure your category tree within Shopify and then publish that categories out to the front end. So that was the ability to sync your categories, and the ability to do multi-channel selling as well is a pretty big important part of the BigCommerce aspect, because you can bring in different marketplaces from the App Store into BigCommerce and connect those. So we went through a couple of those features, showed a little bit about the connector and how to sync orders back and forth. So with that, I will now and so really important to consider which one's right for your business. It just depends, right? There's a lot of benefits, as you saw. I kind of explained a little bit of those benefits today to you. And so if you have any questions or you're still considering which side might be better for your e-commerce business, you can always reach out to Carla Brown. She's on this call. She's joined us. And so I think herself or to Courtney with some information, and we can always connect you with some other individuals and provide a little bit more guidance if you need it. And with that, we'll open it up to Q&A. Do we have anything,
Awesome.
Courtney?
Yes, thank you, Justin.
Sure.
So like you said, we're gonna open up for Q&A. So we've had a couple questions come through. If you haven't gotten your question in yet, go ahead and put it in the questions section. And while you're getting those questions in, we just want to ask a quick poll. So, want to know if you'd like to learn more, like Justin just talked about. We showed a bit of Shopify, a bit of BigCommerce, all tied in with how these function within Acumatica. So if you have that question of which one's right for you, want to dive deeper into the details, let us know and we will have a team member reach out. And in the meantime, we're going to leave this poll open for just a few moments. And then Justin, one of the first questions we've had is how easy is it to get started with Shopify or BigCommerce if I'm already using Acumatica?
That's a great question. So enabling the entities within the system and then syncing those entities out to the system is pretty straightforward. So if you're already using Acumatica, it's only benefits all around, right? So the fact that if you're already have your information in there and you just want to connect to the front end, fairly quick and simple to do. It's just about testing the entities and syncing the expectations back and forth with payments and things like that is probably the area. And when I say payments, it's because usually you've got a payment gateway in Acumatica already. So there's a little bit of discovery there, but for the most part, it's mostly benefits. So good question.
Great. Our next question we have from the audience is, does this allow syncing with Sage 100?
Does this allow syncing with Sage 100, the connector this being?
Yes, I think they're
I'm
referring to
assuming.
Shopify or Acumatica. Do they have integrations there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not familiar with the Sage
I,
side of the business.
I can take that if you want.
Sure.
Yes. So there is, it's a different sync tool. That the one that you were just shown was the Acumatica sync tool. But if you have Sage 100, there are some options to integrate with both solutions or any e-commerce with Sage 100. So happy to discuss that. Make sure and when we reach out, we're happy to follow up with you and go over that. So there are ways. It will be a different connector and different options, but happy to review that with you.
Thank you, Carla.
Uh-huh.
And potentially our last question, unless we have a couple more come in. But I know you touched on this a bit, Justin, but this audience member would like to know how does the connector sync their taxes from their e-commerce platform that they're using?
Yeah, that's a great question. So taxes obviously can be a hot topic depending on if you ship and you hold economic nexus or physical nexus in multiple states. And so taxes can be a bit of a kludgy, when it comes to the connector. And it actually does it very well, so long as the taxes on the front end are established and there's a good understanding of the tax rates that get charged initially on the sales order. The Acumatica actually does a fairly good job at reading that tax rate and making sure that it applies that same tax rate so that you're not getting disparity or differences between the different taxation rates. So ultimately, to be quite honest, the system does a really good job with that. In fact,
And
better than others, I would say.
perfect. And I'll just chime in again, not interrupting, but I'll just add on to what Justin just said. We do have some solutions that work both in your ERP or Acumatica or Sage 100, as well as on the e-commerce platforms that also seamlessly integrate if an add-on solution is necessary. So something else we're happy to discuss with you.
Great. Thank you both. So I think that's gonna, we're coming up on the hour. That looks like it's all of our questions for today. If you, after the session, you think of a question, do not hesitate to reach out to us at info@swktech.com. I think on this next slide, there's some information. If you're unfamiliar with how to reach out to us, let us know in the post-webinar follow-up survey if you want to get some information or talk in detail about how this can specifically work with your software setup that you have right now, or, some problems that your business is looking to solve. So thank you, Justin, for a super informative presentation, and everyone for taking a little bit of time out of your day to be with us. We hope you found it informative, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.